Vocabulary highlighted in the book University of Berkshire Hathaway by Pecaut, Daniel and Wrenn, Corey. 1. I did the grunt work. 2. Clearly, that wasn't worth it. Trading in the short term may work for some people, but it wasn't for me. I needed a better approach. 3. Undaunted. 4. I had felt a pang of jealousy. 5. As a value investor, your ideal situation is to find a company increasing its intrinsic value. 6. As a value investor, your ideal situation is to find a company increasing its intrinsic value. 7. In addition, to succeed using this approach, one must control one's emotions. 8. Their little fiefdom. 9. He then booted out the guy who had tried to chisel him out. 10. The money would come right out of the till. 11. He loves the insurance business. With its float characteristics, it creates a powerful platform for compounding wealth. 12. This reserve, the float, earns money for Berkshire, leveraging the company's return on capital. 13. Few investors understand that float is one of the secrets to Berkshire's success. 14. Selling chocolate doesn't require a lot of innovation. It won't become obsolete. If you have a good brand, customers will keep coming back every Valentine's Day for more. 15. To justify the risk of owning Berkshire, it needs to outperform the general market. 16. More than 2/3 of Berkshire's outperformance over the S&P was earned during down years. 17. Two modern-day sages. 18. Detailed right up. 19. Sibling, like haranguing. 20. You have in your hands fly on the wall analyses. 21. If you can think and behave like they do, particularly under pressure, you will become a great and wealthy investor. 22. Munger never misses a beat. 23. You would do well not to copy its moves. 24. More than one annual meeting, Buffett suggests that the best investment you can make is in yourself. 25. Ben Graham. Graham's books, Security Analysis, 1934, and The Intelligent Investor, 1949, have become the Bibles of value investing. 26. Value is what a business is worth. Price is what you have to pay to get it. 27. Should also note that Graham emphasizes a large margin of safety. 28. Buffett has consistently sought to own either all or part of good businesses for a fair-to-bargain price. 29. This concept is the centerpiece of Buffett's approach. Buffett defines it as what a company would bring if sold to a knowledgeable buyer. 30. If Buffett is correct, long-term bonds and other investments vulnerable to inflation should be avoided. 31. His decisions are based simply on intrinsic business values. 32. At best, he will try to find businesses that can keep pace with inflation. 33. Buffett and Munger have been getting out of the market. Their favorite businesses, media, consumer goods, insurance, have been marked up dramatically in price during this bull market. 34. He is simply acting on his observation that the intrinsic business values of his holdings are fully reflected in current market prices. 35. Bargains among blue chips are virtually non-existent. 36. Therefore, we never try to anticipate the arrival or departure of either disease. Our goal is more modest. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy and to be greedy only when others are fearful. 37. Unfortunately, however, stocks can't outperform businesses indefinitely. 38. Buffett wryly quoted Herb Stein, "Anything that can't go on forever will end." 39. Note that, to minimize market risk, Buffett's bonds will all mature within 12 years. 40. We've had a very low opinion of our abilities. 41. The latter will get you into a lot of trouble. 42. They are no smarter, no more stable psychologically, and they make things more difficult than they are. 43. Munger added that the worst mistakes are made from the nicest graphs and what is really needed is enlightened common sense. 44. Or as Keynes said, would rather be vaguely right than precisely wrong. 45. The bar closes, but you get to finish your drink. 46. Something that costs a penny, sells for $1 and is habit-forming. 47. Printing money is too easy. I'd do it myself if I could. 48. Everyone talks about the big money made in real estate, but they forget to talk about the big money lost in real estate. 49. It's hard enough to understand the culture you've been raised in, much less someone else's. 50. Buffett, you can leverage up to your eyeballs, but you may not make it across the river. 51. We buy great businesses with excellent management at a fair to bargain price and leave them alone. 52. While inflation is still undesirable, well-run businesses that employ relatively little capital, that throw off lots of cash and that have pricing flexibility will cope well with inflation. 53. It's a totally asinine idea. 54. You can't dance in and out of businesses based on forecasts. 55. The fact that you are being obsoleted does not mean you should go into the successor business. 56. Not to get into the airline business, which is a terrible business. The answer was to get out of the passenger business altogether. 57. These brilliant investors focus on finding good businesses at bargain prices within our resilient economy. 58. Munger replied that he is a biography nut and heartily recommended biographies as a way to make friends among the eminent dead. Buffett quipped, and they don't talk back. 59. A lot more people turn out to talk about their money than to look at old paintings. 60. Now we are trading Manhattan for trinkets. 61. Ben Graham said people got into much more trouble with a sound premise than an unsound premise. 62. To deciding who will be the patsy. 63. The hard part, of course, is predicting the future cash flows. 64. I am unfamiliar with this ridiculous extravagance. Munger flies coach. 65. It is extremely difficult to break into the food business, and that is precisely why an established brand name product is so valuable. 66. The history of Wall Street has forever been one of boom and bust. 67. Buffett noted that such an analysis is akin to thinking the sun rose because the cock crowed. 68. As Buffett summed up, if investors only had to study the past, the richest people would be librarians. 69. It is far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. Warren Buffett. 70. There have been two basic themes in value investing: 1. Buy assets, and 2. Buy earnings power. 71. Ben Graham was an asset bargain hunter. 72. Cigar but approach. Unless you are a liquidator, you may end up waiting a long time for that puff of profit. 73. Michaelis prefers the earnings power approach. 74. What he wants are idiot-proof businesses. 75. First leans against the passage of time. 76. Munger lamented that business schools would produce better managers if they would study what makes a good business good and what makes a bad business bad. But they don't. 77. Munger explained that the business schools are merely heeding Ben Franklin's advice: keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut thereafter. 78. While Coke sells 300 drinks per person per year in the U.S., it sells just 59 drinks per person outside the U.S. 79. What's the sense of getting rich if you discard associations you enjoy? 80. Good ideas are rare, and competition in accumulation may push the stock price up. 81. If you are going to be a lifelong buyer of food, you welcome falling prices and deplore price increases. So should it be with investments. 82. Thus, when failure comes, it is huge. 83. Leverage to the gills, Interco was virtually assured of failure from the start. 84. Financial companies don't have to be bad. To the extent there is tough-minded, independent management. 85. Unfortunately, such managers are rare. 86. Who was bored stiff. 87. The documented record of how people have behaved over many years has far more predictive power than a personal interview. 88. Buffett added that this is why they don't hire fresh MBA graduates. There is no record of on-the-job performance. 89. Buffett and Munger have made a hobby out of tweaking the nose of academia and its pet investment theory, the efficient market theory. 90. A well-educated orangutan could see the success of our approach, and yet no one is doing it. 91. Of all their businesses, Buffett believes the insurance business has the greatest potential. 92. Munger pointed out that liquor can be a status symbol and that Guinness products enjoy the rare and remarkable quality that the higher the price, the higher the perceived value. 93. Buffett noted that this illustrates why he pays so little attention to macroeconomic factors. Owning the right business is the key. 94. It is far more fruitful to decide whether a product can sustain itself than make economic predictions. 95. Relate compensation directly to the performance of the business. 96. The documented record of how people have behaved over many years has far more predictive power than a personal interview. 97. Buffett added that this is why they don't hire fresh MBA graduates. There is no record of on-the-job performance. 98. Munger pointed out that liquor can be a status symbol and that Guinness products enjoy the rare and remarkable quality that the higher the price, the higher the perceived value. 99. What he finds objectionable is the large sums being paid for mediocre performance. 100. Hire a detective to find the SOB who pushed me in. 101. Captain of my fate? Hell, I don't even pull an oar. 102. For the man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. 103. They ignore the simple fact that when you buy a business, you own a business. 104. If you're in the sailing business, you want to set up flat earth scholarships. 105. We're predicting how people will swim against the current. We're not predicting the current itself. 106. Even Ben Graham succumbed to the seduction of making a market call. 107. Value is the only concern for any economic commitment. To calculate your expected return, compute the discounted present value of the flow of all cash from the business between now and Judgment Day. 108. Since Kitty Hawk, the industry has lost money every year. Yet the industry asks for more money from investors every year. 109. Munger observed that studying airlines teaches you about competition in a high fixed cost business with a fungible commodity. 110. Book value simply records what was put into the business. The key to calculating value is determining what will come out of the business. 111. Buffett allowed that the market is not cheap. 112. While predicting cash flows for companies is much tougher than for bonds, it can be much more rewarding. 113. Munger noted that many analysts look at huge bodies of past data looking for clues, which results in enormous misspent effort, generally proportional to the IQs of those doing it. 114. Value investing is looking for a mispriced gamble. 115. Buffett chimed in, saying that they would have no edge if they tried to evaluate every horse. 116. Statistics or formulas is that you end up betting on a 14-year-old horse with a great record but is now ready for the glue factory. 117. Buffett noted that generics are a threat in any industry where the leaders earn high returns on equity. 118. Instead, it would attract people like the man who ordered a pizza and, when the vendor asked if he wanted it cut into 8 pieces or 4, the man replied, "Make it 4, I could never eat 8. 119. When asked for great investment books to read, Buffett cited The Intelligent Investor, as always, but then downplayed the idea that investment secrets are hidden in books. 120. Investing is not that complicated, he explained. Other than learning accounting, which is the language of business, the real key to investment success is to have the right mindset with a temperament compatible with those principles. 121. Since then, the rest of the world has taken heed. 122. Buffett quipped, "I may have to shut him off." 123. Too many insurers make the mistake of underwriting based on experience rather than exposure. 124. You don't find out who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out. 125. Buffett gave 2 criteria for evaluating the performance of management. 1. How well do they run the business? And 2. How well do they treat the owners? 126. While good managers might think about the owners, Buffett said that he has found poor managers seldom do. 127. Buffett tries to keep it fun and interesting, to compensate them fairly based on performance and to leave them alone to do what they do best. 128. Berkshire, Buffett explained, is in the business of acquiring businesses and, in the manner of people buying groceries or cars, welcomes lower prices. 129. Buffett said that they know how to evaluate businesses. They do not know how to predict market swings. 130. To think about what will happen versus when is a far more efficient way to behave. 131. He called it a one-time quirk. 132. Buffett defined risk as the possibility of harm or injury. 133. However, Buffett sees the use of beta as nonsense, emphatically stating, volatility is no measure of risk to us. 134. Buffett said that while he is risk-averse, we would be surprised at how much he might put on a 7-to-5 flip. 135. We go where the probabilities are good. 136. He emphasized that it is judgment that has utility in measuring price and value. What is needed is not quick information, but good information. 137. Buffett cautioned that you cannot let the market think for you, you cannot get rich with a weather vane. 138. Don't ask the barber if you need a haircut. 139. I'd rather multiply by 3 than by pi. 140. Normally the business portion of the meeting is railroaded through in a few minutes. 141. Quoting Woody Allen, the advantage of being bisexual is you've doubled your chances for a date on Saturday night. 142. Each year, Buffett and Munger toss cold water on hot academic theories. 143. Listen to your customers, as a business principle does not require a 300-page book. 144. In another poke at human foibles. 145. He quoted Mark Twain, a mine is a hole in the ground owned by a liar. 146. Buffett said the meticulous preparation of most projections tells you it is simply a ritual to justify what an executive wants to do anyway. 147. Something with a lousy past record and a bright future, that's an opportunity we're going to miss. 148. Jealousy is the only sin you can never have any fun at. 149. People don't care what floor the elevator is on, just which way it's going. 150. The world has gone bonkers. 151. Munger said that mistake is made frequently by those who gamble, continuing to gamble when the right thing would be to walk away. 152. The stock does not give a damn. 153. Munger said the ideal business has a wide and long, lasting moat around a terrific castle with an honest lord. 154. The moat represents a barrier to competition and could be low production costs, a trademark, or an advantage of scale or technology. 155. Buffett quoted the Southern newspaper publisher who, when asked of the secrets of his success, replied, monopoly and nepotism. 156. Shrewd operators. 157. Accounting is the language of business, and Buffett and Munger are critical of those who abuse it. 158. On a general note, Buffett said, when accounting appears confusing, avoid the company. The confusion may well be intentional and reveal the character of the management. 159. Buffett noted that debt is meaningless without looking at the ability to pay. 160. Most men would rather die than think. Many have. 161. But, ever principled, Buffett said technology is just not something they want to bet on. 162. Pay above intrinsic business value and you hurt shareholder value. 163. With a scarce and powerful business, cap shrink intensifies our ownership. 164. Similarly, insurance companies generate funds for investment, i.e., float, as policyholders pay premiums. 165. Unlike bank deposits, however, the costs of float are unknown until the policies expire and the claims are settled. 166. Buffett cautioned that ordinary insurance is not a good business and that float, per se, is not a blessing. 167. Munger concluded that one of Buffett's tricks is that he keeps learning. 168. Businesses has been lovingly put together so as not to require continuous intellect at headquarters. 169. Ever the sympathetic ear. 170. Buffett claimed that in 40 years, he has never gotten an idea from a Wall Street report. 171. diversification, twaddle. 172. Buffett noted that he likes to put a lot of money in things he feels strongly about. Diversification makes no sense for someone who knows what they are doing. 173. Diversification is a protection against ignorance, a confession that you do not know the businesses you own. 174. Much of what is taught in corporate finance classes is twaddle. 175. The key according to Buffett is share of mind. 176. It is also nice to recycle Snow White every 7 or 8 years. Buffett likened it to having a huge oil field where you pump and sell all the oil, it eventually seeps back into the ground, and you get to sell it all over again. 177. Slender abilities. 178. Buffett added that they are slim in their ability to predict where change will lead. 179. There's not a whole lot of technology going into the art of the chew. 180. Buffett was emphatic in saying that they love focused management. 181. Buffett noted that it is in the interests of society to get maximum output per unit of input. 182. While he could not name one business ruined by downsizing, he could think of many ruined by bloat. 183. There's no social benefit to idle employment. 184. Coca-Cola and Gillette as the inevitables due to their massive market dominance. 185. He explained that with food, you will never get the total certainty of dominance of Coca-Cola or Gillette. 186. Convenience is a huge factor, people stop at the one they see. 187. The restaurant business is much tougher than the razor business. With food, people will switch with competitive pricing. 188. You can pay too much even for a wonderful business and that the overpayment risk is currently quite high. 189. The first involves capital structure. A company with a ton of debt could be a candidate for foreclosure. 190. A third risk occurs with commodity businesses. Unless you're the low-cost producer, these are poor businesses to own. 191. Overall, Berkshire seeks low-risk businesses with sustainable competitive advantages and strong capital structures. 192. If the business is sound, there remains the risk of paying too much. Here, the risk is time versus loss of principal. 193. Munger recalled Aristotle's observation that systems work better when perceived as fair. 194. Buffett said how one comes out in this lottery is far more important than anything else to one's future. 195. Filters work really well because they are so simple. 196. You must choose the best opportunity you can understand. He summed up, life is a whole series of opportunity costs. 197. Buffett said he looks for a manager who bats 400 and loves it. 198. Avoid the awful. Stick to those who take their promises seriously. 199. Go with those that are understandable with a sustainable edge. The pond you choose is far more important than how well you swim. 200. Despite the excess, Buffett said the real sin is mediocre management. That is what costs the shareholders money. It is almost impossible to overpay for good management. 201. The right manager can have an absolutely huge impact. Find people with brains, energy and integrity, and you can own the world. 202. Supercat writings. 203. Buffett intoned, surprises in insurance are never symmetrical. They are all bad. 204. For example, the notion of buying only understandable, predictable businesses came from painful lessons learned after owning third-level department stores and 205. Munger claimed that See's Candy taught them the virtues of a franchise-type business. 206. Rather than age, learning is the name of the game. 207. He quoted Patton, "It's an honor to die for your country. Make sure the other guys get the honor." 208. You can observe a lot just by looking. 209. Now Buffett has joined the fray. 210. In past Berkshire annual reports, Buffett has discussed the attractive float, generating characteristics of his insurance companies. 211. Buffett has argued that if such float can be generated without an underwriting loss, a dollar of float is worth at least as much as a dollar of equity, even though it appears on the balance sheet as a liability, mostly under net loss reserves and loss adjustment reserves. 212. For the final exam, I would take an internet company and say, how much is this worth? And anybody that gave me an answer, I would flunk. 213. The most brilliant investor of our time is selling stocks and long-term bonds, raising cash. 214. Better to hold cash and keep the powder dry for better risk/reward opportunities. 215. No one should be surprised if we have a major downdraft in the market. 216. As in years past, he said, we don't think about it. 217. When he finds one with great management and great economics at a reasonable price, he buys it either in whole, an acquisition, or in part, a stock market purchase. 218. When he cannot find things to buy, the money piles up. 219. While they may have trouble investing new money today, it is really no trouble to have a pile of money. 220. It is much easier to pick the relative strength of Coca-Cola than it is to pick a winner in software. 221. Buffett reiterated the importance of staying within one's circle of competence. 222. In a capitalist society, everyone is watching you. Competition is fierce. 223. Buffett sees that the internet will have a huge impact on retailing. 224. Munger explained that it is tricky attempting to predict what changes in technology will do. 225. Now the internet poses a threat to both. 226. The key dangers relate to changes in market share, changes in unit demand and the allocation skills of management. 227. The bigger the moat, the less great management is needed. As Peter Lynch has said, find a business any idiot could run because eventually one will. 228. Buffett added that there is a big difference between identifying a growth industry and minting money. 229. Similarly, he cited the airline and auto industries as examples of huge growth industries where very few got rich. 230. Munger warned that corruption in accounting systems was a significant factor in Japan's collapse over the past decade, a lesson in how important it is not to let slop into the system. 231. Munger concluded that Berkshire will be in the S&P index, sooner or later. 232. Buffett said what really matters is share of market and share of mind. 233. The keys to analyzing Coca-Cola's economic progress are L. Unit cases sold, more is better, and 2. Number of shares outstanding, the fewer the better. 234. Buffett believes that is temporary and unimportant to a 10-year projection. 235. Buffett concluded that it's hard to think of a better business in the world. There may be companies that could grow faster, but none as solid. 236. If share of mind exists, the market will follow. 237. He noted that consumer product organizations understand this. For example, 75% of the people in the world have something in their mind about Coca-Cola, and overwhelmingly, it is favorable. 238. He referred to the dramatic increase in casino-like day trading activity as asinine. 239. In the last year, the ability to monetize shareholders' ignorance has never been greater, and warned that average investors should reduce expectations. 240. You are mixing a good concept, such as the internet, with irrational excess. But if you mix raisins with turds, they are still turds. 241. At the Wesco financial meeting, Munger claimed that the single biggest outcome of the internet has been little understood: buyers are the winners. And that means it is quite likely corporate margins will shrink with greater bandwidth. And that, in turn, may not be good for stock prices. 242. Munger noted that high profits on capital often rely on information inefficiencies. 243. Investors need only to have a sensible way to keep wealth growing, especially if they are already rich. If someone else is getting rich, so what? Someone else will always be doing better. 244. The real key is to know what you really want to avoid and give those things a wide berth, such as a bad marriage, an early death, and so on. Do this and life will go much better, he advised. 245. Munger concluded that a lot of the corporate compensation plans of the modern era work just about the way things would work for a farmer if he put a rat colony in the granary. 246. We've got something working very well. It doesn't make sense to tinker with it. 247. Something will turn up. 248. The Keynesian hammer was surprisingly ineffective. It was Japanese psychology that the economists failed to take into account. 249. Insurance companies collect premiums, of which a significant portion go into reserves to pay future claims. This reserve, float, earns money for Berkshire, leveraging the company's return on capital. 250. The value of float is powerful leverage. 251. Buffett concluded that stocks are a perfectly decent way to make 6% or 7% a year over the next 15 to 20 years. But anybody that expects to make 15% per year is living in a dream world. 252. Have difficulty realizing the most important thing with a power system is to have surplus capacity. 253. That said, Buffett said there will be a need for more power generation. 254. Missing a big move in cocoa futures is not an error since that is something they know little about. An error is when it's something they understand, but then they don't act on it in a big way. 255. Munger elegantly calls it thumb sucking. 256. He noted that an attorney can gamble a modest amount of time and have a payoff of tens or hundreds of millions. 257. Buffett concluded that the liability trend will probably accelerate, and therefore, investors should build a margin of safety to account for it. 258. Buffett believes that food companies are probably not at much risk of product liability. 259. Buffett concluded that he would not be at all worried about product liability for Coca-Cola, See's Candy, or Dairy Queen. 260. What the internet really did, asserted Buffett, is give promoters the chance to monetize the hopes and greed of millions of investors through venture capital markets. 261. Munger interjected that he and Buffett were once in the grocery delivery business, a terrible business. 262. The only way it worked, Buffett joked, was to hire guys like Munger as slave labor. 263. Buffett explained that there will always be a battle between brands and retailers. The retailer would like his name to be a brand. 264. Pantyhose. 265. Buffett quipped. 266. It's stupid the way we extrapolate the past. Not just stupid, massively stupid. 267. Munger said that to some degree, stocks sell like Rembrandts. Instead of selling on the value people will get from looking at the picture, they sell based on the fact that Rembrandts have gone up in price in the past. 268. He also suggested that getting knowledge about business has a similar compounding effect. 269. Buffett and Munger have repeated year after year that they seek to buy businesses with enduring competitive advantages. 270. A superior cost structure is often fundamental to a business' sustainable advantage. 271. In retail, the big cost is rent, with labor being a significant secondary cost. 272. The key is to understand a company's costs and why it's got a sustainable edge against its competitors. 273. Since airline travel is pretty much a commodity business, costs are the key factors. The biggest cost is labor. 274. In airlines, as with many other industries in a capitalistic society, business will eventually gravitate to the low-cost player. 275. Buffett observed that it was out of his hands. If the union had decided to strike long enough, his investment and their jobs would have been lost. 276. The question for Berkshire is, will it be in a position to take advantage of it when the time comes? 277. Buffett added that there is no master plan. They will just keep allocating capital as rationally as they can. 278. Munger asserted one of the smartest things to do now is to dampen expectations way down. 279. In the same way, Buffett continued, we each receive one body and one mind for a lifetime. You cannot repair them at age 60. You must maintain them. 280. He added that, unfortunately, humankind has not progressed similarly in our ability to get along. 281. Without such exclusions, Buffett asserted that a nuclear act or two could destroy the entire insurance industry. 282. Munger noted that enormously talented people drift into fraud. The culture carries them there. 283. We won't get defrauded. My crooks look like crooks. 284. It isn't cash flow if it's all flowing out. 285. Depreciation reflects cash that is spent first, and the deductions only come later. 286. Berkshire vastly prefers businesses where you get the cash up front, like insurance. 287. Buffett likened derivatives to hell, easy to get into and tough to get out of. 288. To say derivative accounting in America is a sewer is an insult to sewage. 289. He concluded, creative accounting is a curse to civilization. 290. Success in insurance, Buffett intoned, depends on taking understandable risks properly priced without undue aggregation. The ability to say no is crucial. 291. Munger concluded that in insurance and investing, if you combine a vast exposure with a vast decline rate, you can do very well indeed. 292. All were duds. 293. They wait for the no-brainer, the fat pitch. 294. The Rosetta Stone of investing is to remember that a stock is part ownership in a business. That principle provides the foundation for rational investing. 295. He added that temperament is very important, especially a willingness to go away from the crowd. 296. You're better off sitting and thinking. 297. They were sluggish. 298. Then, if you cannot understand it, it is probably because management doesn't want you to understand it. Management always obfuscates the facts for a reason. 299. There's seldom one cockroach in the kitchen. 300. Buffett also decried the use of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization, as if depreciation wasn't a real expense. 301. Everywhere you see EBITDA, in some analyst's report, simply insert the words, bullshit earnings. 302. Buffett noted that inflation is the enemy of the investor. 303. He noted that GDP is often presented as a gross number. However, he emphasized that per capita GDP is far more meaningful. 304. Such a differential could only breed resentment. 305. Part of what makes the industry dangerous, according to Buffett, is that if you are willing to do dumb things in insurance, they will find you. 306. Buffett continued that when things go bad, all kinds of things correlate that you wouldn't think of. 307. Berkshire has been built on criticism. 308. They have learned by experience that they have made more money with a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. 309. Regarding investment learning, Buffett recommended building your database so that you accumulate knowledge over a lifetime. 310. One thing Buffett said he never reads are analysts' reports. If I read one, it was because the funny papers weren't available, he quipped. 311. Buffett and Munger agreed that their biggest mistakes had been errors of omission rather than commission. 312. Munger asserted that all intelligent people base decisions on opportunity costs. 313. Resulting in perfectly amazing mental malfunctions. 314. Buffett quipped, "Is there anybody we have forgotten to offend?" 315. Buffett advised attendees that the market is there to serve you, not to instruct you. 316. Munger advocated developing a temperament of owning securities without fretting. 317. They suggested that investing is more like parimutuel betting, where you need only be right a few times as long as you don't take a big loss. 318. Buffett seeks to emulate batting, great Ted Williams, who knew his success resided in waiting for the fat pitch. 319. The energy field represents billions of dollars of opportunity. We're not dealing with lemonade stands here. 320. Munger grumbled that with engineering, safety is an enormous concern, but with derivatives, it's as if no one gave a damn about safety. 321. Fit of pique. 322. Sensing that Ringwalt was looking for an excuse to nix the deal, Buffett replied, "I wouldn't dream of asking to see audited financials." 323. Buffett joked, "That's when I knew he was my kind of guy." 324. Buffett claimed that you are successful if the people you hope love you, do love you. 325. Buffett said they knew people with buildings named after them but had no one who loved them. That's no way to live. 326. Voice from the back croaked, well, his brother was worse. 327. The worst sorts of businesses to own in an inflationary environment are ones that require lots of capital to stay in the game and provide no real return. 328. In rebuttal, Buffett said that there is no substitute for thinking. 329. Buffett concluded, quoting Bertrand Russell, most men would rather die than think. Many do. 330. But the bonuses are always related to performance. 331. Thus, the CEO is most motivated to seek pliant board members. 332. Buffett quipped, they don't look for Dobermans. They look for chihuahuas that have been sedated. 333. When they were talking, they were lying, and when they were silent, they were stealing. 334. As Buffett has often taught, the intrinsic value of an asset is the cash it will earn from here to eternity, discounted back to the present. 335. Fortune 500 includes a 50-year retrospective that shows only a very few companies were able to grow at even 10% or better over that period. 336. Munger noted the common error is not thinking through the consequences of the consequences. 337. While intelligence is helpful, Buffett and Munger asserted that having the proper temperament was far more critical. 338. Munger agreed that one must read a lot to be wise, but curiously noted that he has found few among those who read a lot that have the proper temperament. Most get confused by the mass of information. 339. Buffett claimed that successful investing requires not extraordinary intellect but extraordinary discipline. 340. He noted that if you are enumerate in business, you'll be a klutz. 341. But he got anchored on a price of $23. When the price moved up, he stopped buying. 342. Today, people are still just as crazy as that king, looking for people who pretend to know the future, giving Wall Street economic incentive to sell its nostrum. 343. With low probability events, he asserted that people underestimate them if they haven't occurred for a while and overestimate them if they occurred recently. 344. So he advised, over the next 50 years, conduct yourself so that if there is a financial crunch, you'll get through. 345. That's why they don't believe in a lot of leverage at Berkshire. Throughout history, it is leverage that wipes people out. 346. Buffett stated emphatically, in a cataclysm, Berkshire would definitely be the last man standing. 347. The key has been having incentives in place to get the right employee behavior. 348. He suggested developing good character and good mental habits and to learn as you go. 349. Buffett concluded with the story of the woman who turned 103 and was asked, "What do you like about being 103?" She responded, "No peer pressure." 350. Buffett added that, "It is not a great business when you have a prayer session before raising prices a penny." 351. Buffett concluded that you can learn a lot about the durability of the economics of a business by observing price behavior. 352. Likewise for Coca-Cola, oil, an acre of land. Meanwhile, gold has little real utility. 353. Ever subtle, Munger noted that with the opportunities of Berkshire averaged out, gold is a dumb investment. 354. Buffett concluded, "This is not something that causes me to salivate." 355. Buffett warned that when there is trouble, everything correlates. Thus, in managing catastrophic losses, one must think through the ripple effects. 356. Buffett concluded that with the way Berkshire conducts its affairs, he won't lose sleep no matter what. 357. He believes that a good school system is like virginity, it can be preserved but not restored. 358. Buffett observed that mortgage terms have gotten easier and easier as housing prices have gotten higher and higher. He noted this is absolutely counter to how the prudent think about lending. 359. Buffett said he would be an idiot to jump in a NetJet and say to the pilot, "I'm in a big hurry to get to New York." To rush the pilot through his safety procedures would be dumb. Yet companies have done this sort of thing time after time with compensation systems that incentivize the wrong things. 360. For example, many corporate managers are told to submit budgets and quarterly estimates. This leads to a short-term focus and undue worry about the quarter. 361. May fudge the numbers. 362. Munger noted that when you fall from the 42nd floor to the 20th floor and you're doing fine, it does not mean that you don't have a serious problem. 363. In addition, Buffett asserted that the accounting shenanigans have been mind-boggling, with errors in the billions of dollars. 364. Munger warned that there is much wrong with derivative accounting, and the full penalty has not been paid yet. 365. Buffett noted the best way to find great managers is to look at the record. 366. Mixing sports metaphors, he noted that the best batters are the ones with the best batting averages. 367. Buffett believes it has far more to do with the wiring than he would have thought 30 years ago. 368. Buffett concluded humorously, since my dad would not let me be a bookie, I went into investing. 369. They merely go where the opportunities are regardless of categories, and that is totally out of step with modern investment theory. 370. Regarding modern asset allocation, Munger concluded, if a thing is not worth doing at all, it's not worth doing well. 371. Tax-wise, investors are better treated than at any time in his lifetime. People expecting 10% or more from these levels, however, are unrealistic. 372. When you are buying groceries, you welcome lower prices. Buffett said Berkshire is the same way. They will be glad to see temporarily low prices, so they can put their cash to work. 373. He also said Berkshire needs to keep a minimum of $10 billion around in reserves for mega-cat insurance policies written. 374. If one guy received a bonus of $2 million and the next guy got $2.1 million, the first guy would be miserable for the next year. So it is envy, not greed, that is the dominant sin among investment bankers. 375. Envious CEOs use it as a shopping list for seeking pay raises. 376. We prefer to wring the last drop of good out of Warren. 377. Do you really think Warren Buffett will blow the job of passing on the faith? 378. Munger emphasized that Berkshire does not train executives, it finds them. 379. If a mountain like Mount Everest stands up, you don't have to be genius to see it's a high mountain. 380. According to Buffett, the job of the board is to 1. Get the right CEO, 2. Keep the CEO from overreaching, and 3. Exercise independent judgment on acquisitions. 381. It is important to know what is too hard for you and stick to what you do best. 382. You don't have to throw the shot put. 383. Buffett noted that, as a general rule, he ignores what is hot. 384. Historically, agricultural processing has not earned high returns on capital. 385. With commodities, if you get too many producers, you'll have poor returns. 386. Munger was even more of a wet blanket. 387. It's a good habit to trumpet your failures and be quiet about your successes. 388. Markets become like Cinderella at the ball. At midnight, they will turn to pumpkins and mice. Each player wants one more glass of champagne, one more dance, and then they'll get out in time. But there are no clocks on the wall. 389. Buffett noted that loose lending has run amok. 390. Buffett noted that in some coastal markets, the day traders of the internet bubble became the day traders of condos. 391. Buffett noted that Berkshire is the number 1 mega-catastrophe underwriter in the world. 392. Why shouldn't we use our capital strength when others are frightened? 393. Buffett noted that the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is not a particularly good measure of inflation. 394. Buffett noted that often the best opportunities come in the midst of some convulsion. The key is to buy when others are paralyzed. 395. The key is to follow logic rather than emotion. Focus on what is important and knowable rather than on public opinion. 396. It has caused premium rates to go down, so insurance profits will follow suit. 397. He noted he wants someone who not only learns from what has happened but can also envision things that have never happened, especially in regard to risks. 398. The problem is that anything times 0 is 0. No matter how good the record was in every other year, if there is just one year with a 0, it's all over. 399. Buffett noted that he and Charlie have seen guys go broke or close to it because 99 of 100 of their decisions were good, but the 100th did them in. 400. This will go on, but eventually will cause a big denouement. 401. People were dealing in scrip. 402. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. We'll have something that rhymes. 403. He called it dumb lending for lenders to make a high percentage of loans where people make tiny payments early on and hope to make it up with higher payments later. 404. If accountants lie down on the job, you see huge folly. 405. It's an enormously difficult thing to run a big company, so the greater sin is having the wrong person. 406. As he's pointed out in prior years, what really drives the compensation insanity is envy, not greed. Someone getting paid $2 million might be quite happy until they hear about someone else that got $2.1 million. 407. As he's pointed out in prior years, what really drives the compensation insanity is envy, not greed. Someone getting paid $2 million might be quite happy until they hear about someone else that got $2.1 million. 408. He surmised that this is not a good time to swing for the fences. 409. Buffett asserted that to a large extent, gambling is a tax on ignorance. 410. Buffett favors great businesses, which he defines as those having a high return on capital for a long period of time. 411. However, there is no one easy mechanical formula to determine intrinsic value and margin of safety. You have to apply lots of models. So it takes time to get good at it. 412. Buffett emphasized that the ability to generate cash and reinvest is critical. 413. Buffett has taught in past years that it is important to know the one or two key factors in each business you own. 414. Finally, Buffett stressed the importance of staying within one's circle of competence. 415. Everything in sight and recommended good investors should read everything they can. 416. Fill your mind with competing ideas, and see what makes sense to you. 417. In modern portfolio theory, beta is a measure of volatility, which, in turn, is seen as a measure of risk. The higher the beta, the higher the risk. 418. Buffett begs to differ, asserting volatility does not measure risk. Beta is nice and mathematical, but it's wrong. 419. Buffett concluded, this concept of volatility is useful for people whose career is teaching, but it's useless to us. 420. Buffett believes that real risk comes from the nature of certain kinds of businesses, by the simple economics of the business and from not knowing what you're doing. 421. At least 50% of what is taught is twaddle, but these people have very high IQs. We recognized early on that very smart people do very dumb things, and we wanted to know why and who so we could avoid them. 422. The idea of finding talented people to do what they do best is one of Buffett's driving principles. 423. We have often recommended to our friends and clients George Clason's classic, The Richest Man in Babylon. 424. He got the idea to add a mental compound interest as well. So he decided he would sell himself the best hour of the day to improving his own mind, and the world could buy the rest of his time. 425. He also noted that if you become very reliable and stay that way, it will be very hard to fail in doing anything you want. 426. Buffett were teaching business school, he would make it shockingly simple. Teach, 1. How to value a business, and, 2. How to think about market fluctuations, that the market is there to serve you, not influence you. That would be it. Professors fill the time with all sorts of formulas. 427. Buffett noted that he will be very happy with a 10% total return on his stock portfolio. 428. He concluded that, we'll have decent results but not indecent results. 429. We're happy making money at a reduced rate and suggest you do the same. 430. He simply buys the ones who are already running great companies. 431. He simply finds decades, long records of excellent performance. 432. Buffett asks whether the manager loves the money or loves the business. If they love the business, they'll be a good fit for Berkshire. 433. For example, in the printing business, to an amazing degree, the best equipment is German-made. For 34, if you cannot think fast and act resolutely, it does you no good. Like men spear fishing, you may wait a long time, and when opportunity comes, you must act. For 35, Munger rued that elite schools teach that the secret of investment management is diversification. They have it backwards, he asserted. Non-diversification is the key. For 36, turned out to be like trying to shoot an elephant with a pea shooter. For 37, what you need is a CEO with risk aversion in his DNA and the ability to resist employees who want to copy others to make money. For 38, Munger was more direct, calling it crazy that the government would allow the banks to get too big to fail, a product of a culture of greed and overreaching. Overconfidence in algorithms played a part as well. For 39, at Berkshire, Buffett is the chief risk officer, and they spend a lot of time thinking about what could hit them out of the blue. For 40, some combination of wanting to get rich, leverage and belief in the tooth fairy will generate another bubble in time. For 41, Buffett summed up that he could have more leverage at Berkshire, but for what? For 42, mortgage market where skid row bums were swept up and given easy-term mortgages. For 43, at Berkshire, they think like engineers, looking for big margins of safety. For 44, Buffett noted that this simplicity is a big advantage. For 45, Buffett observed that big food companies are good businesses. They earn good returns on tangible assets. For 46, Buffett noted that the size of a bank means little to him. What really counts is the culture. For 47, Munger noted that smaller banks are probably a good place to prospect for investment value. For 48, Buffett noted it has been better to retain the cash at Berkshire, where it can automatically compound. For 49, big shots do not like to be embarrassed. For 50, Buffett quipped, he gets cranky late in the day. For 51, when he speaks to students, he suggests they adopt the mindset of someone who is picking one car for the rest of their lives. How would they treat it? For 52, he strongly recommended Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, for the task. For 53, Munger added that states legalize gambling with lotteries, effectively encouraging the populace to bet against the odds. For 54, Buffett provided that Wells Fargo will come out of this way stronger than it went in. For 55, Wells Fargo has a fabulous business model. For 56, Munger noted that a lot of spreadsheets and fancy math can lead to false precision and worse decisions. For 57, he allowed, they teach the fancy math in business schools because, well, they gotta do something. For 58, you only need an IQ of 120 or so to be a good investor. For 59, higher math can lead you astray. For 60, Munger noted that they are good at fancy math and, as with the man with the hammer, treated each problem like a nail. For 61, stupidity ran wild, and everyone else was doing it became the primary rationale. It's hard to stop once there is such widespread industry acceptance. For 62, Munger added that practically every investment manager he regards highly got creamed last year. For 63, his two courses, if he were to run a business school, would be 1, how to value a business, and 2, how to think about markets. That would be it. For 64, in valuing businesses, it is important to understand the language of accounting, to stay within your circle of competence, and to focus on what is meaningful. For 65, the key here is emotional stability, to have an inner peace about your decisions. It is important to think for yourself and to make good decisions over time. For 66, the key with markets is that you cannot allow yourself to be forced to sell, from using too much leverage, and that you must not sell in a panic mode, emotionally pulling the rug out from under yourself. For 67, science advances one funeral at a time. For 68, Munger added that Berkshire is not looking for mismanagement. While they like businesses that can withstand some folly, some fabulous things are one-off. For 69, however, long-term, the fact that Berkshire can have so much float at a cost of less than zero is a great advantage. The key is to focus on what matters. For 70, everyone is a bargain shopper now. For 71, Buffett has amped up the annual ad budget to $800 million. 472. Munger nearly elbowed Buffett out of the way to answer a question. 473. Buffett recommended reading John Kenneth Galbraith's The Crash. 474. For companies selling to Berkshire, Buffett noted that it is important that it is known that we like allocating cash flows. Our reputation is that we buy to keep, and people can trust us on that. 475. Buffett was emphatic, you can bet on inflation. 476. The best protection against inflation, according to Buffett, is your own earning power. 477. Buffett loves newspapers, reading at least 5 a day. 478. Buffett said Walter Annenberg invented a term, essentiality, and that newspapers once had that for advertisers and customers. 479. Buffett estimated that 90% of the buyback activity in the last 5 years was mostly herd behavior. 480. It's the regulators you need to please in utility transactions. 481. He noted that mankind is getting close to solving the technical problem of our time, solar power. Cheap, clean, storable power will change the world. 482. The economic recovery has been picking up steam. 483. The practice too often leads to a fudging of the numbers. 484. However, Munger also noted that every business should decline some business. 485. He lamented, give humans a chance and they'll go plumb crazy. 486. It creates a system where eventually everyone goes bluey. 487. Both Buffett and Munger are betting on higher, and maybe a lot higher inflation in the years to come. 488. Berkshire's hallmark has been to find companies that gushed cash and required little or no capital reinvestment. 489. You have to like a business where the customers tattoo your name on their chests. 490. Buffett noted that people do crazy things from time to time, and it is not a function of IQ. You cannot modify the madness of mankind. 491. Munger added that Warren, as will we all, will ultimately pay a tax of 100%. When we die we leave it all. 492. Imposing policy from headquarters can build resentment. Berkshire is the opposite, totally decentralized management. 493. Railroads are riskier as they are more sensitive to the economy. 494. Buffett shared that earthquakes and hurricanes are the 2 biggest catastrophe risks. 495. By taking the other guy's desire to smooth earnings, Berkshire gets big premiums up front and books larger, though lumpier, earnings over time. 496. Wall Street has always been partly a casino operation, as well as a socially important operation in the raising and allocating of capital. 497. Now anyone could buy the index and ignore real companies. The casino was then officially open to all. 498. You shouldn't watch 2 things, sausage making and legislation making. 499. The problem is a moral hazard. If the undisciplined are not punished for it, then why should others be disciplined? Munger concluded that it is wise to invest in places that are prosperous and disciplined. Integrity still matters. 500. Munger added that much bad behavior is subconscious, and the cure is to have folks bear the consequences of their decisions. Seen from this perspective, Wall Street is an irresponsible and immoral system. 501. Buffett repeated his old mantra that successful investing requires the right temperament, to be greedy when others are fearful. If you get scared yourself, then you won't make a lot of money in securities. 502. Munger shared that he developed courage after hardship. Maybe it's a good idea to get your feet wet in some failure. 503. Buffett shared that there's nothing like following your passion. 504. Spend less than what you make. Know and stay within your circle of competence. The only businesses that matter are the ones you put your money in. Keep learning over time. Don't lose. Insist on a margin of safety. 505. Munger suggested making it your practice that you go to bed each night wiser than when you got up. You may rise slowly, but you are sure to rise. 506. Long noted for being a bit of curmudgeon. 507. Maintain low expectations. That is the key to happiness. 508. Pragmatism. Do what suits your temperament. Do what works better with experience. Do what works and keep doing it. That's the fundamental algorithm of life. Repeat what works. 509. The message throughout: look not what the numbers are, but what the numbers mean. 510. What the numbers mean: Geico's growing intrinsic value is much greater than what the accounting reports. 511. Investors should focus on gains in operating earnings, gains in book value, and gains in intrinsic value. 512. You can always tell a man to go to hell tomorrow if it's such a good idea. 513. Fire one, hire another if need be. 514. Buffett answered that he is indeed enthused about America. 515. Buffett allowed that if you have tons of receivables and inventory, that's a lousy business in inflation. 516. Buffett added that being an investor has made him a better businessman and that being a businessman has made him a better investor. 517. Buffett pulled out his wallet, took out a $1 bill and read out loud, "In God we trust." He noted this is false advertising. What it should say is, "In government we trust." 518. The point is that any currency investment is a bet on how government will behave. 519. But that cube isn't going to do anything. You are simply betting someone will buy it higher. 520. For example, with a farm, one can make a rational calculation on its value. Success will be determined on cash produced. 521. Buffett concluded that he will bet on good businesses to outperform gold. 522. At their best, conglomerates enable the tax-efficient transfer of cash from businesses that cannot use the money intelligently to those that can. Berkshire is a very rational conglomerate. 523. That's the oldest-looking corpse I ever saw. 524. Munger observed that Greece is an awful situation. People there, while wonderful in many respects, do not want to work or to pay taxes. He quoted Adam Smith, "A great civilization has a good deal of ruin in it." 525. He suggested that reduced expectations are the best defense for the investor. He added that lowering expectations was how he got married. "My wife lowered her expectations." Buffett immediately quipped, and he lived up to them. 526. He noted that you can find huge compliance departments on Wall Street, and that is where the biggest scandals occur. 527. Construction has a ripple effect through many ancillary businesses. 528. At Berkshire, they don't mind having lumpy earnings over a business cycle. 529. Buffett chimed in that sees candy loses money 8 months of the year. Yet we know that Christmas will come, so there's no reason to look at one losing month and panic. 530. And that finance attracts the same sort of people who are attracted to snake charming. 531. Buffett quipped, "If there's anyone else we forgot to insult, just pass their names up." 532. Munger observed that it's a problem to prevent success and wealth from creating your demise. 533. Buffett agreed that investment choices for short-term money are lousy right now. However, he emphasized that he doesn't mess around with short-term money. 534. It's a parking place, and we want our car back when we're done parking, Buffett declared. 535. So Buffett's big point was to develop yourself. Find your passion and improve your skills. 536. The two basic risks he analyzes are excessive leverage and insurance risk. 537. He characterized value at risk as one of the dumbest ideas ever put forward. 538. How can you fire me? Gottesman replied, "I'm a rich old man, and you make me nervous." 539. Buffett noted that after 9/11, it was very difficult to assess insurance damages. For example, what counts as business interruption? 540. Pricing the reinsurance of catastrophes is very difficult. It's hard to detect a series of random events from what might constitute a long-term trend. 541. Events like this are why Buffett insists that Berkshire keep at least $20 billion in cash. 542. He likes painting his own canvas and getting applause for doing well. So he seeks managers who are wired in the same way, giving them the paintbrushes and compensating them well for good performance. 543. Buffett quipped, "Charlie's in charge of diplomacy at Berkshire." 544. Buffett noted he has seen the stock cut in half 4 times and that the beauty of stocks is that they can sell at silly prices sometimes. Buffett was definitive, it's how we got rich. 545. Build into your system that stocks get mispriced. 546. Buffett joked, "This is Charlie's version of saving up sex for old age." Munger retorted, "But we're going to use the oil." 547. Buffett noted that business schools focus on one fad after another, usually mathematically based. 548. He noted that Ray Kroc had no need to know the option value of McDonald's, but thought long and hard about how to make better fries. 549. Affairs. If it's a good business at a good price, we buy it. There is always going to be bad news out there. 550. To buy value. We don't look to headlines. 551. While the economics are not as good as they once were, newspapers still have a role to play. 552. From businesses they don't understand well. 553. Avoid new issues. The insiders are selling their company, so it's ridiculous to think that an IPO will be the cheapest thing to buy in a world of thousands of stocks. The IPO sellers pick the time to sell. So don't waste 5 seconds on it. 554. Instead, look at things other smart people are buying. 555. Don't dwell too much on mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes. 556. Read the stories of financial follies. 557. If people need income, Buffett suggested just selling off a few shares each year. 558. Munger added that there's a lot of false confidence on Wall Street. 559. We buy barriers to entry. We don't build them, declared Munger. 560. To further his point, Buffett took note of how Richard Branson's Virgin Cola came and went, joking that a brand is a promise, but he's not sure what the promise was with Branson's product. 561. Munger noted that all it takes is one competitor to ruin a business. 562. We love the little guy, but the way to bet has been on the big. 563. In the 1970s, Geico got into trouble, and Buffett took advantage of a weak stock price to buy a lot of the stock. 564. That nationwide branding created a share of mind that has led to exceptional growth in market share. 565. He noted that insurance underwriting involves figuring out the probability of a person generating a claim, i.e., having an accident. 566. To help explain, he used an example from the life insurance industry, noting that someone who is 100 years old is more likely to die next year than someone who is 20. 567. Effectively, if your risk selection process treats 16-year-olds like 82-year-olds, you're going to get horrible underwriting results. 568. Munger observed that the reinsurance business is usually not very good for most people. The key to Berkshire's success with reinsurance is the unique way it is run. 569. Insurance in particular should be conducted as a rational activity. One problem some insurers have is that they have pressure from Wall Street to increase premiums every year. 570. Buffett added that if Berkshire does something stupid, it's not because of outside influences. 571. He went on to compare this to refusing to buy internet stocks in the late 1990s, referring to it as a social proof or bandwagon effect. 572. Munger added that the Bible says things like, "You can't covet your neighbor's ass," for a reason. 573. Even worse, envy is the one sin that's no fun. 574. That you can't afford to go along with the crowd in investment or insurance or a lot of things. 575. He went on to conclude that they like it at Berkshire because they are not pressured to do dumb things. 576. There's shale developments and more unfolding. 577. He noted that people talk all the time about future and macro issues, but they don't know what they're talking about. It's not very productive. 578. Buffett profoundly noted, to ignore what you know to listen to someone else who doesn't know, doesn't make sense. 579. However, Berkshire's success will also depend on opportunities provided by turbulent markets like 2008, when size and a lot of capital gave them an advantage. 580. Thanks to Charlie's prodding, they have paid up for good businesses. 581. As Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead. 582. Buffett joked, Charlie says he won't be here to see it. I reject such defeatism. 583. Interest rates are to asset prices sort of like gravity is to the apple. 584. Buffett continued, interest rates power everything in the economic universe. 585. Buffett emphasized that at Berkshire, they never stretch for yield. 586. Being able to say yes very quickly to large deals sets you apart from every other investor. Berkshire is the 800 number when there is a panic in the markets. 587. Using one of his favorite metaphors, Buffett pointed out that when the investment tide goes out, you will see who has been swimming naked. Adding dryly, those naked swimmers will call Berkshire. 588. Buffett affirmed that Berkshire gets the calls that no one else gets because they have the money and the willingness to act immediately. 589. Munger spoke about Berkshire's competitive advantages. In his mind, those include the ability to stay sane when others are crazy. 590. Buffett concluded, our competitive advantage is that we have no competitors. 591. Berkshire looks at shareholders as partners. The owners/managers want shareholders to get the same result they get. 592. Yet because any one company cannot control the cost, it's a big disadvantage. 593. He thinks the key to life is that the old virtues still work, like plugging along and staying rational. 594. Buffett agreed that there was no question that being born male and in the U.S. was a huge advantage. 595. Now we've got the money and no ideas. 596. He noted we will always have bubbles because it is the nature of capitalism to go to excess. That's what humans do. But the next bubble will come in some other way. 597. I can see the journalists just licking their chops waiting for Charlie to throw a thunderbolt. He's unusually restrained today. 598. The important thing will be to preserve the culture and that picking the right CEO will be the key to that. 599. No investor gets more media attention, and yet so little understanding flows out of that attention. 600. This year Buffett did a shout-out on Berkshire's value. 601. For Buffett to have his largest sector waiting in banks. 602. The man is on a roll. 603. Corporations can do with $1 earned, reinvest in the business, acquire other businesses or assets, pay down debt, pay dividends, and/or buy in shares. 604. In other words, each extra dollar should go where it gets the best risk, adjusted return over the long run compared to all other competing opportunities. 605. After years of mastering accounting or just, in, time production or sales and marketing, the rising manager is suddenly in charge of something he's had no training for, capital allocation. 606. After years of buying low, capital, high cash flow businesses, Buffett has assembled a group of businesses that can guzzle cash. 607. Buffett then put the pedal to the metal on the ad budget. 608. Buffett said he prefers to keep the balance sheet super strong, with a minimum of $20 billion in cash. 609. Intelligent capital allocation is the essence of sound wealth building. 610. It is not in Clayton's interests to sell a house where the buyer defaults since that will be loss for the company as well as for the customer. 611. For Clayton, about 3% of these mortgages default. The primary reasons for mortgage default are loss of job, divorce, and death. However, 97% don't default. 612. Buffett noted that the 3G people are successful business builders and buyers. They seek to run their businesses efficiently, and that includes reducing headcount when there are considerably more people in the business than are needed. 613. Efficiency is required over time in capitalism. 614. Each industry is different. Also, they keep learning. 615. Buffett observed that they do have filters. A key one is whether they have a good idea of how the business is going to do over the next 5 or 10 years. That filter eliminates many businesses from consideration. 616. Another filter is people. Buffett wants people to run the business the same way after selling to Berkshire as they ran it before selling to Berkshire. That filter also eliminates a lot of deals. 617. Buffett chimed in that he finds it interesting when he gets asked questions about investments Berkshire owns and that people think he would want to talk them up. 6:18, Munger replied, "Warren, if people weren't so often wrong, we wouldn't be so rich." 6:19, Buffett was pleased that 97% of shareholders voted against having a dividend and in favor of having management invest the cash. 6:20, culture comes from the top according to Buffett. The leader must be consistent, communicate well, and reward proper behavior and punish misbehavior. Since it takes time, it's actually easier to inherit the culture you like. 6:21, Buffett reiterated that a strong brand is really powerful, though you do have to build them and promote them. 6:22, Munger wryly noted, "If we failed to predict what happened before, why would anybody ask us what our prediction was for the future?" 6:23, Fortunately for shareholders, macro predictions are not essential to the Berkshire process. 6:24, he said the real key is to be able to figure out what the average profitability of the business will be over the long term and how strong the business moat may be. 6:25, Buffett's punchline, "We think that any company that has an economist has one employee too many." 6:26, Buffett concluded that with $60 billion in cash, Berkshire would be ready and willing to act if some economic turbulence creates an opportunity. 6:27, Buffett claimed, "Charlie gets the girls. Every mother tells her daughter, if choosing between two old men, pick the older one." 6:28, this is a departure from the early years at Berkshire when they owned cheap stocks and easy to operate companies. Now, they've learned to find great managers, which creates an opening to own more complex businesses. 6:29, at age 92, I still have lots of ignorance left to work on. 6:30, there was more driving and more distracted driving. Geico needed to adjust its premiums accordingly and will do better in 2016. This accounts for the elevated combined ratio. 6:31, Amazon's created a big advantage with its intense focus on developing millions of satisfied customers. You're not going to beat them. 6:32, Munger suggested that, on balance, Berkshire has been helped by the internet. 6:33, Munger suggested it would be like canceling air travel because 100 people died in a crash. 6:34, to say the detriments without including the benefits is immature and stupid. 6:35, Buffett noted that a major cyber, nuclear, or biological attack is a near certainty that will happen at some point. 6:36, Buffett still sees derivatives as a potential time bomb in the system. 6:37, Buffett reminded folks that to buy a stock is to buy part ownership of a business. Don't get hung up on daily price quotes. Instead, think about business performance and what you would pay for the business, just as you would a farm. 6:38, Buffett assured that American business will be fine over time. Don't be envious. Follow your own course. 6:39, if you want more financial efficiency in education, you're howling at the wind. 6:40, the only thing up are the professors' salaries. For too many schools, the purpose of the endowment is to make a bigger endowment. 6:41, Munger stopped himself, I've made all the enemies I can afford. 6:42, the Valiant business model was enormously flawed and had been touted to Berkshire. 6:43, in sum, you can skip the fees and get the performance of American industry by owning an S&P 500 index fund. 6:44, Buffett asserted that far more money is made on Wall Street with selling talent than with investing talent. 6:45, Buffett noted that the main problem is Berkshire's size. To a significant degree, size is the enemy of performance. 6:46, Buffett, a full wallet is like a full bladder. One could get the urge very quickly to pee it away. 6:47, it's just a matter of time because a percentage of the population comprises psychotics, megalomaniacs, and religious fanatics. 6:48, again, he warned, anything that has a 99.9% chance of not happening eventually will happen. 6:49, what matters most to him are micro factors, as opposed to the macro factors that so often get all the attention. He loves to know all the details of a business. 6:50, he noted that Warren's gift is that he thinks ahead of the crowd. He thinks in such a clear way. 651. Buffett quoted Yogi Berra, "You can see a lot just by observing." 652. Munger chimed in, saying that what is required is the proper temperament of opportunism combined with patience coupled with trying to behave well. 653. Buffett said what matters most with an acquisition is whether you have a fix on the basic economics of the business. 654. For example, if you give a manager $1 billion for a business he once owned 100%, will he behave in the future as he has in the past? It's a hugely important question that's not on a checklist. 655. Munger concurred, noting that the essence of it all is the quality of the business and the human quality of the management. Neither can be assured by due diligence. 656. Who said the best approach is to never hire a person you don't need, so you never have to lay anyone off. 657. His impression is that 3G is extremely intelligent about staffing. In packaged foods, volume trends are not good, so some cutting is needed. 658. He recommended reading Barbarians at the Gate for a lesson on how a great business can get sloppy. 659. Munger noted the importance of proper incentives. You get what you reward for. Reward for silliness, and you will get silly outcomes. 660. Munger noted the importance of proper incentives. You get what you reward for. Reward for silliness, and you will get silly outcomes. 661. Munger, I think if you see the world accurately, it's bound to be humorous because it's so ridiculous. 662. However, it is not what the numbers are but what they mean that matters. 663. 4.1. Focus on intrinsic value growth, not reported earnings. Again, it's not what the numbers are but what they mean that matters. 664. If the float comes with little or no cost, it acts much like equity. 665. In the case of Geico, competitors are ceding market share to shelter profit margins. 666. When an insurance company cedes a book of business to a reinsurer, it is still on the hook if the reinsurer fails to pay. 667. Munger noted that Buffett's purchase of Apple suggests that either he is crazy or he is learning, most likely the latter. 668. It's a very different world. It used to be that growing and earning larger and larger amounts of money required large reinvestments of capital. Not so with these top 5, which generate almost infinite returns on capital. 669. Buffett confessed, I blew it. 670. He noted that it is difficult to predict winners in new areas. Even more amazing is when a person builds 2 major businesses from a standing start, as Jeff Bezos of Amazon has done with retail and the cloud. 671. Munger concluded that Jeff Bezos is a different species. 672. Berkshire leans heavily on principles of behavior rather than loads of rules. He claimed that a culture that self-selects is better than a 1,000-page manual. 673. Lose money for the firm and I will be understanding. Lose one shred of reputation for the firm and I will be ruthless. 674. It was flamming. 675. Although every situation is unique, in general, he loves a competitive advantage that can last for decades, talented and eager managers who fit the Berkshire culture, and of course, a good price. 676. Munger, we were young and ignorant. Buffett, now we're old and ignorant. 677. He observed that being wrong is when he learns the most. 678. Buffett added that if you want to be a good evaluator of a business, run a lousy business for a while. You can see how awful it can be and that having a high IQ doesn't help. 679. These companies were not purchased because they would never have problems or competition, but because they had durable competitive advantages. 680. After years of warding off marauders. 681. Buffett cautioned that it's no cinch. 682. Buffett summed up that the keys will be operating margins, fewer shares, and the intensity of pricing competition. 683. Buffett noted that intrinsic business value can only be calculated in retrospect, cash generated between now and Judgment Day discounted back to the present at an appropriate interest rate. 684. Munger noted that size is the anchor of performance, and they are proving it. 685. Berkshire has such a wide variety of earning streams. In every way, Berkshire is structured to handle stresses. 686. Munger insightfully concluded, a lot of people are trying to be brilliant. We're just trying to stay rational. That's a big advantage. Trying to be brilliant is dangerous. 687. While he doesn't wish adversity on anyone, Berkshire benefits from times of chaos. 688. Buffett noted that, when the world is fearful, people have a hard time believing things will get better. Berkshire has no such trouble. 689. And when fear hits, things can happen faster than you can believe. 690. For his successor, Buffett emphasized that proven capital allocation abilities would be the key. 691. Farming, steel, retail, all these areas have always been getting more productive. America is a story of constantly finding better ways to do things. 692. Buffett asserted that 3G was fair in severance. 693. And 2,000 people were let go. 694. Buffett concluded that Iowa is terrific for wind and California is terrific for solar. 695. Buffett labeled medical costs the tapeworm of American economic competitiveness. 696. Munger concluded, and to make the teaching endurable, it has to have a bit of wise assery in it. And that we've both been able to supply.